Hi guys, I'm Tiare Gattimora. This is my personal YouTube channel. And today we need to talk about internet brain rot. So I'm gonna start to introduce this all with a quote that I ironically found on X. It's by Trotsky and it's from Why Marxists Oppose Individual Terrorism. In our eyes, individual terror is inadmissible precisely because it belittles the role of the masses in their own consciousness, reconciles them to their powerlessness, and turns their eyes and hopes towards a great avenger. So, as I'm sure pretty much all of you will have heard, 31-year-old conservative activist and influencer Charlie Kirk died last week after he was shot at a university event in Utah, United States. And the alleged killer had a very serious case of internet brain rot, apparently. And obviously, the issues that are being discussed in relation to this, and rightly so, in many instances by the left, are the danger of this becoming an excuse, much like 9/11 did, for sort of like civil liberties being undermined and under threat, and in this particular instance, especially in terms of free speech, and political activism, perhaps. I can definitely see the current administration, for instance, using this, in the US and beyond, like using this as an excuse to basically, cut on free speech, and that would be extremely alarming for sure. I've also seen a lot of people respond to this with, arguments about the right to bear arms in the United States. I do believe that's a real problem they have and probably why this happened. And so I respect those reactions. I don't respect the reactions of, including someone I know, texting on a group chat like, oh, should we make hey fascist catch? I'll get to where that comes from later. Should we make that a thing? And I'm like, no, we shouldn't. Like, 100% no, we should not. This is a tragedy, period, and I'd also get to why this might not be viewed as such by some on the left, and why it definitely should be viewed as such by leftists. I want to talk about internet brain rot because, to be honest, I was watching this Kyle Kulinski news about this, and he was, kind of pointing at, the internet brain rot of this guy. And I think, this story has so much to do with the internet in general, because we're talking about basically an influencer, politics on the internet, the alleged killer being also brain rotted by the internet, and I think the internet itself, I don't think it's the cause for where we're at, but I think it embodies and reflects a lot of the situation that we find ourselves in, and that is embedded in the zeitgeist. And so I wanna point to the issues that I normally discuss, specifically within the internet and sort of who rings it, right? So just to go back to what happened, I will link to a David Dole video where he kind of sums up who the alleged killer is. Allegedly, he's Tyler Robinson, who appears to have been engulfed, like I said, in the online meme world. Inscriptions on bullet casings read statements such as, "Hey, fascist, catch, notice his bulges, OWO, what's this? And if you read this, you are gay, LMAO. LMAO. I mean, just to go on, I'm gonna quote from this Vanity Fair article. "None of the phrases Robinson allegedly wrote are known code words for anything nefarious. They signal little beyond a connection to a contextless internet where memes take on a life of their own and are used by the benign and malignant alike." So this is a scenario that's being presented to us. It's just... What was the quote? First time as tragedy, second time as farce. It's quite farcical, isn't it? Anyway, I want to bring back a quote that I already discussed previously on this channel that I think is very much connected to the idea of non-places, and I want to link it to the internet in this instance. So in White Lotus, Portia says, "I just thought I'd come here and feel something. Is everything boring? I just feel like there must have been a time when the world had more like mystery or something. And now you come somewhere like this and it's beautiful and you take a picture and then you realize that everybody's taking that exact same picture from that exact same spot. You just made some redundant content for stupid Instagram." So in Ghosts of My Life, Mark Fisher describes a halfway place, a prototype version of what the anthropologist Marc Augé will call it a 1995 book of the same title, Non-Places. The generic zones of transit, retails, parks, airports, which will come to increasingly dominate the spaces of late capitalism. In other words, clone generic monoliths. These are such spaces, airports, for instance, train stations, places that basically have no character, that could be in New York, London, Madrid, and they're there for basically consumption. They don't appear to have any connection to the past, to any narrative for the future. They're there to be consumed, and they are above all generic, right? And very much copies of each other. And yeah, they're disconnected from this sort of cancelable history, and very much hopeless about, like Mark Fisher would say, a cancelled future. And no wonder it's cancelled, I think, because in that future there is no human agentic subject that can shape that future and that can be collectively embodied by an organized working class. There's no future, there's just tonight, right? And yeah, there's like, it's, to me, what really stands out is how, and that I try to discuss here often, is how that lack of an agentic subject that can operate on the world and on the future sort of kind of implies that the future, or any different future from the separate or new from the current conditions, that any sort of future can be attained ever. And then to me that does imply its cancellation, tragically. And I want to link this sort of disconnected, cut adrift space without character to influencers in general. I think this kind of space and this kind of persona, because it's embodied by many influencers, sort of reigns online and has a lot of success, actually, much more than its opposite. And I think, and I hope this woman is having a great life. It's nothing personal. But I do think someone like Kylie Jenner would be a perfect example of this. Basically, she is so far removed from a person with character of their own. And because she's so man-made, there can be so many copies of her that, again, dominate that online arena, and who are not only inhabit, because you see them in this like really just like nothing spaces. Like, they're luxurious, sure, they seem comfortable, but there's nothing in them. Like, it's like, where's the flavor here? Like, I taste nothing in these spaces that they inhabit. But they themselves taste like nothing to me. Like, they are the clone generic monoliths. There's no character. There's no, maybe there's no defect, but there's also no humanity, right? It's completely bizarre to me, and it does reflect that, that void where we're cut adrift fundamentally, like detached from the past, from the future, from each other, and I mean, in their case, from any sort of real world as well, but not from NGOism. Hence why I want to give another example of an influencer who maybe reflects this less in a looks manner, but completely in her role, her social role, and also reflects the connections that the left, in my opinion, sadly establishes with characters of this sort. I'm gonna read from an article in Jacobin by Gabriele Di Donfrancesco. It's titled "How Italy's Left Tied Its Fate to a Scandal Hit Influencer, Chiara Ferragni." So Ferragni's participation in the country's top music contest, the Sanremo Festival, faced scrutiny for the excessive fee that she was granted. Sanremo is a program on national broadcaster Rai, partly funded with public money as people pay a mandatory fee for its output. In response, the influencer pledged to donate the sum she had received to an association for the elimination of violence against women. Progressive media celebrated the act for its bravery. A heartfelt thank you, Chiara, for giving visibility to the fight against violence on women came from two prominent Democrats, the former president of Lower House of Parliament, Laura Boldrini, and the party president, Stefano Bonaccini. Only journalist and longtime vocal critic of Ferragni, Selvaggia Lucarelli, in the left-wing newspaper Il Fatto Quotidiano, along with social media strategist Serena Mazzini, noticed that the influencer had sported a peculiar outfit at the press conference. It was a Girls Supporting Girls jersey, selling for €219 on her online store. Ferragni was receiving praise for resolving a reputational crisis with some subliminal advertising masked as a donation. So influencers like Ferragni and the politicians who supported her, in my opinion, reflect various traits of the current left. A post-political reliance on NGOism, because this woman, who is now pretty disgraced, has so heavily relied on like charity, like any sort of scandal or controversy there was around, she responded to with charity donations, and so did her ex-husband. Just very obvious what they were doing there. And she's also, I like this post-political left, with her, or anti-political even, with her like populist focus on identity politics, always looking for the next victim, while focusing on very, very much on gender issues and mental health. They're prioritizing class, if not honestly completely erasing it in her case. And her goal seems to be much like this type of left, looking like the good guy and appealing to emotions, right? So good guys versus bad guys. I support women and I'm vulnerable, therefore I'm a victim, therefore I'm the good guy. This sort of thing. Her fragile persona, I think, is no longer offering an aspirational, godlike picture of power, agency, and universalism, but one of a vulnerable victim who is just as sort of victimizable as the ones she's saving, right? So much connected to what I was saying before. There is no historical epic collective struggle to be connected to. There is no organized struggle where we are agentic and we can, operate on, shape the future, operate on the current material conditions. None of that. It's all about turning inward, mental health, of you, the victim, the good guy, saving other good guys, and they're aiding their mental health, right? And eliminating violence. But no real change, no antagonism, no epic or collective struggle. None of that. And I think, influencers do this because they know they know that's what's cool right now, but it's tragic how it reflects so much of the left. And I think Chiara Ferragni and the left's, please read this article that I'm quoting, and the left's support of her, which has aged so badly, is such a clear example of this modus operandi, of this approach. And I want to go on and read from Damage Magazine, of course. John Therese writes in the article, Voluntary Twitter Extinction Society, the extreme marketization of society that defined the 1980s and 1990s made the West uniquely vulnerable to the perils of social media. The dissolution of voluntary organizations, the decline of 40s job stability, and with it, trade unionism, the death of religious life, the evaporation of amateur athletic associations, the dissolution of the masses, and the rise of a multitudinous crowd of individuals all were forces that generated the demand for social media long before there was a product like Facebook to supply the consumer. Social media could only grow in a void not of its own making. Social media is thus both an expression of the crisis of the social that pre-exists the internet and a potent accelerator of that crisis. And later on in the article, the internet must be understood within the frame of the crisis of civil society that political scientist Peter Mayer described as the void. On the one hand, the online thrives off of the atomization that the neoliberal offensive has inflicted on society. It is the substitute association for a world in which all associative units have been pulverized. At the same time, the internet evidently accelerates and even entrenches this atomization. The internet is the ideal exit option for a general exit society. It allows people to exercise voice in the Hirschmanian sense, while always keeping open the possibility that you can completely drop out and check out. The stigma that comes with leaving a Facebook group or a Twitter subculture is incomparable to having to move out of a neighborhood because you scrapped during a strike. So, it'll be obvious to you if you've watched me ever at all. This is completely connected to what I usually argue about, basically us being having to be our own anchors, inwardly focused, and always ready to sort of make the next individual choice. Park our bags and detach and part from situations and from others. So fundamentally, being often forced, but also told is desirable to constantly change homes, jobs, even cities, countries, relationships, whether those be familial, friendship, romantic, pretty much any kind. And to fundamentally retire from Western civil life, right? So being basically cut adrift, existing in this void where we are our own anchors, where it's all about our inner psychic life and our actions that are very much personal life actions as consumers, right? No understanding of ourselves as workers, no regard of ourselves as agentic subjects, obviously no class organizing, like I just was reading, these institutions that allowed for that organizing completely emptied out, and what's left is, turning inward, as we're also told that the problem lies not in, or the only solvable problem lies not in capitalism, but in ourselves, because we're such idiots, we just need to look inward and just think positive, right? And hence completely retiring from civil life, from society. And the internet greatly reflects this reality, and it's itself this sort of cut adrift non-place, much like Kylie Jenner, for instance, or influencers like Ferragni, which again, there's no civil project there, is there? At most, you're gonna save some victims, aren't you? I want to end on an article in Compact magazine by Kay Craig. It's titled "The Online Dance of Death," and it talks about other instances where there's been very public deaths, whether that be accidents, murders, etc., where there's been a huge online response, much like in Kirk's case. It reads, "The revelry over healthcare CEO Brian Thompson's murder is part of an overall trend of online celebrations of death when it befalls those regarded as too privileged to deserve our sympathy. Consider the June 2023 reaction to the Titans of Merciful implosion. This horrifying accident, which initially was thought to involve the days-long suffocation of the submersible's occupants, was also an object of glee for many social media users. Those who died included deep-sea explorer and conservationist Paul Henry Nargolet, 19-year-old college student Suleiman Dawood, and his philanthropist father, an aviator and Arctic adventurer Hamish Harding. All were fabulously wealthy, but none of them made for an obvious villain, as Thompson did. The article continues. To some, chortling at the death of Brian Thompson probably seems obviously justified, while doing the same to homeless New Yorker Jordan Neely seems unconscionably sociopathic. But to believe this denies an essential truth. At the point of death, the differences between these two men cease to matter. The article continues. Just like someone who has suffered a certain hardship feels sympathy for others with the same hardship, the knowledge that one must die instills a respect for the deaths of others. If we have lost that respect, it is because we lost sight of our own mortality. And to be honest, we are so far removed from the world and from others, much like I've been saying, from the past and the future, from the universalism of humanism, that we can barely remember our own humanity and its materiality. And quite honestly, it should be no surprise, given a zeitgeist that regards ourselves, people, as the cause of all our problems, and as too many for the earth to bear. That's it for today. I'm gonna leave it there, link this all down below. I'd love to know what you guys think about this new situation. Please like and subscribe to support me, and I will be back very soon.